I never thought the people who gave me life would be the ones to try and destroy it. Not physically, but financially, professionally, emotionally. What would you do if your own parents, the same people who raised you, who fed you, who told you they loved you, looked you dead in the eye and said, "You're fired"? Fired from your company, the one you built, the one that came from your mind, your sleepless nights, your sacrifice. I'll never forget that morning. I pulled into my parking spot, the same spot I'd parked in for 5 years, the spot with my name on it, founder, CEO. I built this place from nothing, from an idea scribbled on the back of a napkin, from a dream that people laughed at. But when I walked toward the entrance that day, something felt wrong. The security guard, Derek, the same man I'd hired 3 years ago, the same man whose daughter's graduation I'd helped pay for, he wouldn't look at me. His eyes dropped to the floor like I was a stranger, like I was someone to be ashamed of. I swiped my keycard. Red light. I swiped it again. Red light. My heart started pounding, that kind of pounding where you feel it in your throat, in your temples, in your fingertips. "Derek, what's going on?" He still wouldn't look at me. And that's when I saw them. 2 men in suits walking toward me. Corporate lawyers. I could smell it on them. The expensive cologne, the cold eyes. They moved like they already owned the place. "Miss Carter, we need you to come with us. There are some documents you need to sign." Documents? I built this company. Every contract, every partnership, every single line of code that made this platform worth anything, it came from me. But it wasn't until they handed me the letter that my whole world collapsed. Termination of employment, effective immediately. Board decision. And the signatures at the bottom? My mother's name, right there, in ink. My father's name, right beneath it. My own parents had just fired me from the company I created. See, 3 years ago, when the company started taking off, I made a decision that I thought was generous, that I thought was loving. My parents had worked their whole lives and had nothing to show for it. No retirement, no savings, nothing. So I gave them shares, significant shares. I brought them onto the board. I gave them 51% of everything I had built because I wanted them to finally be comfortable. I wanted to take care of them the way they had taken care of me. I gave them the majority because I trusted them. I trusted them more than I trusted myself. And now they had used that 51% to sell my company for $12 million to a tech conglomerate. $12 million. And they didn't even have the decency to tell me to my face. I felt like the ground had opened up and swallowed me whole. Everything I had ever feared, being unseen, being used, being disposable, it was all true. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was just a tool, a stepping stone, a ladder they could climb and then kick away once they reached the top. And for a moment, standing there with that termination letter trembling in my hands, I thought it was over. I thought they had taken everything from me. But here's the thing about betrayal. It makes you remember things, important things, details that people who've never built anything from scratch would never think to look for. My parents thought they were smart. They thought they had covered every angle, signed every contract, locked every door. But they forgot one thing. One satisfying, beautiful, devastating thing. See, the software that powers this entire platform, the core algorithm that makes everything run, it doesn't just sit on company servers waiting to be sold. It requires a biometric key to function, a security measure I built into the system from day one. My fingerprint, my voice authentication, my personal encryption. Without me, that $12 million software is nothing but a screen full of error messages. And they had just locked themselves out of their own building, which meant they had also just locked themselves out of their golden payday. They just didn't know it yet. Let me take you back to where it all started. I grew up in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Baltimore, the kind of place where the radiator clanged all night and the walls were so thin you could hear your neighbors' arguments like they were happening in your own kitchen. My parents worked themselves to the bone. My father drove delivery trucks 6 days a week. My mother cleaned houses for wealthy families across town. They came home exhausted every night, smelling like sweat and other people's laundry. And me? I was the miracle child, the one who was going to make it, the one who was going to save this family out of poverty. Baby, you're special. You're going to be somebody. You're going to save us. Save us. Do you know how heavy those words are when you're 8 years old? I was carrying the weight of my family's entire future before I even understood what a future was. So, I worked. I studied. I pushed myself in ways no child should have to push. I taught myself to code on a beat-up laptop my mother found at a thrift store for $15. The screen flickered, half the keys were sticky, but that laptop became my escape, my obsession, my ticket out. By the time I graduated college on a full scholarship, because my parents couldn't afford a single textbook, I had already created the early version of what would become my company. Teachers had pushed me toward more realistic careers. Counselors had looked right past me. Investors had laughed me out of rooms. But I kept building. I kept coding. I kept going. And eventually, I created something that nobody could ignore. A platform that revolutionized how small businesses manage their operations. Inventory, scheduling, payments, customer tracking, all in one elegant system. I coded every function myself. Late nights in my tiny apartment, weekends without sunlight, ramen noodles and cold coffee. Nobody helped me build it. But the moment it started making money, everybody wanted in, especially my parents. My father started showing up at my apartment unannounced. "Just checking on my baby girl," he'd say. But his eyes would wander to my laptop, to the paperwork on my desk, to the invoices piling up. I remember one afternoon, he picked up a check from a client, $5,000. He didn't even look at the client's name. He just ran his thumb across the zeros, slow and deliberate, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. My mother started calling every day with questions she'd never asked before. "How does this business thing work, honey? Who owns what? Are you protecting yourself legally?" At first, I thought it was sweet. I thought they were finally proud of me, not for what I could give them, but just for who I was. I was so desperate for that feeling, so desperate for their approval. So, when my father suggested he get more involved to handle the business side so I can focus on creating, I said yes. When my mother proposed they both join the board just to protect you, baby, just to make sure nobody takes advantage of you, I said yes. And then came the decision that destroyed everything. The company needed capital to scale, real capital, the kind that comes with strings attached. An investor named Richard Dunham offered us $2 million, but he wanted 20% of the company in return. I was nervous. 20% felt like a lot to give away to a stranger. My father sat me down one night and said, "Baby girl, don't you trust us more than some outsider? Give us each 20% instead. Keep 40 for yourself. That way the family stays in control. Blood protects blood. Blood protects blood." I believed him. So I gave my mother 20%. I gave my father 20%. I kept 40 for myself, thinking I was still the majority shareholder, thinking I was still safe. I didn't do the math. 20 plus 20 equals 40. My parents together had exactly as much power as I did, and all they needed was one outside voice to tip the scales. That outside voice came 6 months later in the form of Richard Dunham, the same investor I had turned down. Except this time he wasn't talking to me. He was having private dinners with my parents, meetings I wasn't invited to, phone calls that went silent when I walked into the room. I didn't know it then, but my parents and father were building an alliance behind my back. They were convincing Richard that I was too emotional to lead, too inexperienced to handle real money, too attached to the creative side to make smart business decisions. They were positioning themselves as the responsible adults, and me, I was just the difficult daughter who needed to be managed. By the time I realized what was happening, it was already too late. My parents controlled 40%, Richard controlled 20%. Together, they had 60% of my company. I had 40. And 60 beats 40 every time. They didn't just betray me, they outmaneuvered me, using the exact shares I had given them out of love. And the worst part? I still didn't see the knife coming, not until it was buried so deep in my back that I couldn't breathe. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you exactly how it happened. The meeting, the ambush, the moment I watched my own parents smile while they stole my life's work right out under me. The meeting was scheduled for 9 in the morning on a Tuesday. I remember because I almost didn't go. The night before, I had been up until 3 a.m. fixing a bug in the payment processing system. My eyes were burning, my back ached from hunching over my keyboard. I thought about sending an email to postpone. But my mother had called that morning, sweet as honey. "Baby, you have to be there. This is important. It's about the future of the company. Your future." Your future? So I dragged myself out of bed. I put on my best blazer. I drove to the office thinking this was just another boring quarterly review. I had no idea I was walking into my own execution. When I stepped into the conference room, something felt different. The energy was wrong. My father was already sitting at the head of the table, not beside me, where he usually sat, at the head, in my chair. My mother was next to him, flipping through a stack of documents I had never seen before. She didn't look up when I walked in, didn't smile, didn't say good morning. And at the far end of the table sat Richard Dunham. Richard, the investor I had turned down a year ago, the man who had looked me up and down in that first meeting like I was a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. What was he doing here? "Sit down, Vanessa." That was my father. No baby girl, no warmth, just a cold command. I sat. My mother finally looked up, and I'll never forget her expression. It wasn't guilt, it wasn't shame, it was impatience, like I was wasting her time just by existing. "We need to discuss the future of this company and your role in it." My role? I built this company. I was this company. Richard leaned forward, adjusting his cufflinks like this was just another Tuesday for him. "Vanessa, I'll cut to the chase. I've made an offer to acquire the platform, $12 million. Your parents and I have discussed it extensively, and we believe it's in the best interest of all shareholders to accept." My heart stopped. "You what?" I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at my mother. She met them just fine, cold and steady. "The deal's already in motion," she said. "We've had our lawyers review everything. All we need is the board's approval." "I'm on the board," I said. My voice was shaking. "I'm the CEO. I'm the founder. You can't just—" "Actually," Richard interrupted, sliding a document across the table, "we can. Your parents collectively hold 40%, I hold 20%. That's 60% in favor of the acquisition. Your 40% is noted, but ultimately irrelevant." Irrelevant. That word hit me like a punch to the chest. Irrelevant. The woman who built every single feature of this platform, the woman who coded until her fingers cramped, the woman who sacrificed her 20s, her health, her sanity? Irrelevant. "Daddy," I heard myself say. I hated how small my voice sounded, how desperate. "Daddy, please, please don't do this." He shifted in his seat. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in his eyes. Hesitation, maybe even regret. But then my mother put her hand on his arm, a small gesture, a reminder, and just like that, whatever was left of my father disappeared. "It's already done, Vanessa," he said quietly. "This is what's best for everyone." Best for everyone? I was on my feet now. I didn't even remember standing. I built this. Every late night, every sacrifice, every single line of code came from my mind, my hands, and you're just going to sell it out from under me? To him? I pointed at Richard. He didn't even flinch. He just smiled, a small, satisfied smile that made my stomach turn. "This is exactly what we were talking about," my mother said to Richard, like I wasn't even in the room. "You see? Emotional, erratic. This is why she can't lead." "I'm not emotional. I'm betrayed. There's a difference." "Lower your voice," my father said, still not looking at me. "You're embarrassing yourself." Embarrassing myself. I had given these people everything. My money, my trust, my love. I had handed them the keys to my kingdom because I believed blood meant something, because I believed that family would never turn on family. And now they were sitting there, calm and collected, carving up my life's work like a Thanksgiving turkey. "There's something else," Richard said, pulling out another document. "Effective immediately, the board has voted to terminate your employment as CEO. You'll be compensated according to your shareholder agreement, of course, but your operational role is concluded." Terminated, compensated, concluded. Words that meant nothing. Words that erased 5 years of my life like I was just a line item on a spreadsheet. "You can't do this," I whispered. "You can't just take everything from me." My mother finally stood. She walked towards me, slowly, her heels clicking on the floor like a countdown. She stopped right in front of me, close enough that I could smell her perfume, the same perfume I used to bury my face in a child when I was scared. "Baby," she said softly, like I was 5 years old again, like she hadn't just ripped my heart out of my chest. "We're not taking anything from you. We're just reallocating resources. You'll understand one day. This is business." Business. My own mother just called my destruction business. She reached out and patted my cheek, like I was 5 years old again, like she hadn't just ripped my heart out of my chest. "Security will escort you out. Don't make a scene." And that's when Derek appeared in the doorway. Derek, who I had hired. Derek, whose daughter's graduation I helped pay for. He couldn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the floor. "Miss Carter, if you'll come with me." I looked around the room one last time. My father, still avoiding my eyes. Richard, already tapping on his phone, bored now that the drama was over. And my mother, sitting back down, smoothing her skirt like she had just finished a mildly unpleasant chore. I walked out of that conference room with my head held high. I refused to cry in front of them. I refused to give them the satisfaction. But the moment I stepped outside, the moment the morning air hit my face, I collapsed against the building wall and sobbed. Not because of the money, not because of the company, but because the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had just proved that their love had a price tag, and I wasn't worth more than $12 million. I stayed there for 20 minutes, maybe 30, just crying, just trying to breathe. And then something shifted. The grief started to harden, the tears started to dry, and a single thought began to surface through the fog of pain. Wait. The biometric key, the core algorithm, the security protocol I had built into the system from day one, the one that required my fingerprint, my voice authentication, my personal encryption to function. They had just sold a $12 million platform, a platform that could not run without me. My mother wanted to talk about business. Fine, let's talk business. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the sound of my tires on the asphalt and the pounding of my own heart. For the first hour, I just stared at the ceiling of my apartment. I felt empty, hollowed out, like a building that had been gutted from the inside. But then my phone buzzed. It was Richard Dunham. Then again, my father. Then again, my mother. Then Richard again. 3 missed calls, 5 missed calls, 10. My stomach twisted. Had they realized my mistake? Had they found some loophole I didn't know about? Was there something else they wanted to take from me? I almost turned the phone off. I almost threw it across the room and went to sleep for a week. But then a text came through from Richard. "Vanessa, we have a problem. Call me immediately." Problem. I sat up. I opened my laptop, not the one I used for work, but my old personal one, the one with the sticky keys. I logged in to the remote diagnostic tool I had built years ago just to monitor system health. It was a hidden back door, something only I knew about. I watched the screen as the logs started to populate. Attempted login, admin user, Richard_D, failed. Attempted login, admin user, Richard_D, failed. Attempted login, Mother C, failed. System alert, biometric authentication required, access denied. System alert, core kernel locked, encryption level 5, active. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. They were trying to access the core algorithm. They were trying to demonstrate the product to the new buyers. They were probably in that conference room right now, sweating through their expensive suits, trying to figure out why their $12 million purchase was acting like a brick. I didn't answer the phone. I let it ring, and ring, and ring. For 2 days, I didn't leave my apartment. I watched the logs. I saw their desperation escalate in real time. Attempted override, failed. Attempted server reboot, failed. Attempted database restore, failed. By the 3rd day, the voicemails had changed tone. First was anger. "Vanessa, stop playing games. You're being childish." Then was panic. "The buyers are asking questions. If we don't show them the live data by Friday, the deal is off." And finally, it was begging. "Baby, please call Mommy. We just want to talk. We can work this out." Work this out. Now they wanted to talk, now that their payday was evaporating into thin air. I finally picked up the phone on Friday morning, not to call them, but to call my lawyer. "I want a meeting," I told him, "on my terms, in my apartment, and tell them to bring the paperwork." When they arrived, they looked different. My father looked 10 years older. His shoulders were slumped. He wasn't the man who sat at the head of the table 3 days ago. My mother looked frail. Her makeup wasn't perfect. Her eyes were red. And Richard, the arrogant investor who called me irrelevant, he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His tie was loose. He was sweating. They sat on my cheap IKEA sofa, the same sofa my parents made fun of when they first visited. "Vanessa," Richard started, his voice tight, We seem to be having some technical difficulties with the transition." I didn't offer them water. I didn't offer them coffee. I just leaned back in my chair and waited. "The system won't run," he continued, clearer this time. "It's asking for a biometric key, your fingerprint, your voice." "I know. I built it that way." "Well," my mother chimed in, trying to force a smile, "we just need you to come down to the office and unlock it for us. Just a quick little visit, baby, and then we can get your severance package all sorted out." Severance package. They still didn't get it. "No," I said. The room went silent. "Excuse me?" Richard asked. "No, I'm not coming down to the office. I'm not unlocking anything, and I don't want a severance package." "Vanessa, be reasonable," my father said. "The buyers are walking on Monday if the system isn't live. The deal falls apart. $12 million gone." "Correction," I said. "Your $12 million. My 40% share, that was never about the money for me. It was about the work, the creation, the thing you stole." Richard stood up, his face turning red. "Listen to me, you little brat. You are legally obligated to facilitate this transition. We can sue you for breach of fiduciary duty. We can bury you in legal fees for the next 10 years. I looked at my lawyer. He smiled and slid a single piece of paper across the coffee table. "Actually," my lawyer said, "Vanessa's employment contract, the one you drafted, Richard, states that she is required to turn over all company property upon termination. The code is company property. She left it on the servers. She didn't take it." He paused. "However, her biological data, her fingerprint, her voice pattern, is considered personal property under state privacy laws. You cannot compel an individual to surrender their bodily autonomy for a corporate asset unless it was explicitly stipulated in a biometric agreement." My lawyer looked at Richard. "Did you have her sign a biometric agreement?" Richard's face went pale. He looked at my parents. My parents looked at the floor. "So," I said, standing up, "here is where we stand. You have a company that is worth nothing without me. You have a buyer who is about to walk away, and you have zero legal leverage to force me to help you." I walked over to the window and looked out on the city. The same city where I grew up poor, the same city where I built myself into something. "The deal is dead," I said, without turning around. "Unless—" "Unless what?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. "Anything, baby, anything." I turned around and looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the fear in their eyes, the greed that had turned into desperation, and I knew exactly what I had to do. "Unless what?" Richard asked again. The sweat was visible on his forehead now. I walked back to the table and sat down, slowly, deliberately. "Unless we renegotiate," I said. "Renegotiate?" my father asked, hope flickering in his eyes. "You mean you want a bigger severance?" I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "I don't want severance, Daddy. I want my company back." Richard scoffed. "That's impossible. We hold 60%. The board has voted." "Then unvote," I said. "Here is my offer. Take it or leave it." I nodded to my lawyer. He pulled out a fresh stack of documents. "Option A," I said. "I don't unlock the system. The buyer walks on Monday. The company's valuation drops to zero because the product doesn't work. You lose your $12 million. I lose my share too. But honestly, I'm young. I can build it again. You three, you're done." I let that hang in the air. I watched my parents shrink. They knew I was right. They had gambled their retirement on this deal. If it failed, they were back to square one. "Option B," I continued, "you sign these papers right now." "What are they?" my mother asked, her hand shaking as she reached for them. "A stock transfer agreement," I said. "Richard, you sell your 20% back to the company treasury at cost. You get your original $2 million back, not a penny more." "Are you insane?" Richard shouted. "That share is worth $4 million in this deal." "It's worth zero if I don't touch that scanner," I said calmly. "Do you want $2 million or zero? Pick one." Richard clenched his jaw so hard I thought his teeth would crack. He looked at the paperwork, then at me, then at the door. He knew he was cornered. "And us?" my father asked quietly. "What about us?" I looked at my parents. the people I had tried to save, the people who tried to sell me. You transfer your 40% to me for $1. Vanessa, my mother gasped. That's robbery. We're your parents. No, I said, my voice rising for the first time. Robbery is taking your daughter's life work and selling it behind her back. Robbery is looking me in the eye and firing me from the house I built. This is consequences. We won't do it, my father said, crossing his arms. We won't sign. You wouldn't do that to your own family. Try me. I pulled out my phone. I'm going to call the buyers right now. I'm going to tell them the CEO has been fired and the source code is biometrically locked. I'm going to tell them the deal is fraudulent because you sold them goods you couldn't deliver. I started dialing. Speakerphone on. Ring. Don't, my mother whispered. Ring. Vanessa, please, my father begged. Ring. Hello, this is... We'll sign, Richard screamed. Hang up, we'll sign. I hung up. The room was dead silent. The only sound was Richard's heavy breathing. He grabbed the pen first. He signed the papers with aggressive, angry strokes. He threw the pen down and looked at me with pure hatred. You're a monster, he spat. I'm a businesswoman, I replied. You taught me that. He stormed out of the apartment without another word. Then it was just me and my parents. My father picked up the pen. His hand was trembling. He looked at me one last time, searching for the little girl who used to sit on his lap. We just wanted to be comfortable, he said, his voice cracking. We just wanted to rest. I would have given you everything, I said, tears finally stinging my eyes. I was giving you everything. All you had to do was trust me. All you had to do was not betray me. He signed. My mother signed. She was crying openly now, silent, shaking sobs. When they were done, I took the papers. I checked every signature. It was done. I owned 80% of the company now. Richard was out. My parents were out. I had my company back. Can we, my mother started, wiping her eyes, can we still be part of your life even if we're not part of the business? I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the regret. I saw the shame. But I also saw the truth. They didn't respect me until I forced them to. They didn't see my value until I took it away. I think, I said slowly, walking to the door and holding it open, that for a long time, the only thing we should discuss is the weather. My father nodded. He understood. They walked out into the hallway. My mother tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. I closed the door. I locked it. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 20 years. I was alone in my apartment, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't lonely. I was free. I walked out of that apartment with the ink still wet on the page. It was done. The terms were brutal, but fair. Richard had resigned effective immediately, walking away with nothing but his original investment. My parents had transferred their entire 40% stake back to me for exactly $1. In exchange, I agreed to not sue them for conspiracy and to provide a modest monthly stipend for their retirement. They got their safety, but they lost their control. And they lost me. The next morning, I walked into my office building. Derek was at the front desk. When he saw me, he froze. He looked nervous, probably expecting me to yell or fire him or maybe just walk right past him. I stopped. "Good morning, Derek," I said. He blinked. "Miss Carter, I thought, I'm back. And Derek, next time some suits try to walk me out of my own building, call me first." He smiled, a real, genuine smile. "Yes, ma'am. welcome home. I swiped my keycard. Green light. I walked into the elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. That afternoon, I called an all-hands meeting. I stood in front of my team, the engineers, the designers, the people who actually did the work. I told them, there are going to be some changes. We're not selling. We're building. And we did. Over the next 2 years, we doubled the company's revenue, not because we sold out, but because we focused on the product. We focused on the people. I never spoke to Richard Dunham again. Last I heard, he was being investigated for fraud in another deal. Karma, as they say, has a way of balancing the books. As for my parents, it's been 3 years. We talk, occasionally. We talk about the weather, we talk about their health. I still pay off their house. I still make sure they have everything they need, because they're my parents, and I love them. But I don't let them in. They don't have keys to my apartment, they don't have seats on my board, and they definitely don't have access to my heart the way they used to. I learned the hard way that sometimes the people who are supposed to be your safety net are actually the ones holding the scissors. And that's the lesson, isn't it? We spend so much of our lives seeking validation. We want our parents to be proud. We want our partners to be impressed. We want the world to clap for us. But you cannot build your foundation on someone else's approval, because the moment they decide to move, your whole house falls down. You have to own your code. You have to own your worth, your talent, your boundaries. Because at the end of the day, the only person who can truly protect your dream is you. And if someone tries to take it from you, make sure you're the one holding the key.